Although it hails from a remote region of the western Himalayas, this plant now looks entirely at home on the banks of English rivers. Brought to the UK in 1839, it quickly escaped from Victorian gardens and colonized riverbanks and damp woodlands. Now it is spreading across Europe, New Zealand, Canada and the US.
The beginning of the 21st century will be remembered, not for military conflicts or political events, but for a whole new age of globalization, a flattening of the world. The explosion of advanced technologies now means that suddenly knowledge pools and resources have connected all over the planet, leveling the playing field as never before. At the beginning of each fiscal year, funds are allocated to each state account in accordance with the university's financial plan. Funds are allocated to each account by objects of expenditure. Account managers are responsible for ensuring that adequate funds are available in the appropriate object before initiating transactions to use the funds.
Although Botswana's economic outlook remains strong, the devastation that AIDS has caused threatens to destroy the country's future. In 2001, Botswana had the highest rate of HIV infection in the world. With the help of international donors, it launched an ambitious national campaign that provided free antiviral drugs to anyone who needed them, and by March 2004, Botswana's infection rate had dropped significantly.
It's not that human activities didn't impact wildlife at all. Of course. Heavily hunted species, like white-tailed deer, gray squirrels, and raccoons, were photographed somewhat less often in hunted areas. Coyotes showed up more often in hunted areas. While most species didn't avoid hiking trails, the predators actually preferred them. Networking is easy and fun because it taps into this human predilection to talk about ourselves when asked. Consider successful networking as little more than the process of guiding a person to tell you about his life, what he's doing, the company that employs him, and his current industry. As a historian, if you really want to understand the sensibilities of those who lived in the past, you must be like a novelist and get into the skins of your characters and think and feel as they do. You are asked to imagine what it's like to be a peasant in medieval times, asking the sort of questions a peasant might ask. What the writer is saying is that a historian needs imaginative sympathy with ordinary people in the past.
In 2005, donor countries agreed on an accord to harmonize their practices. Since then, 8 officials have complained that too little has changed on the ground. Conferences of donors in developing countries still tend to be dominated by a small group of North European governments, with the US often absent. Introverts, or those of us with introverted tendencies, tend to recharge by spending time alone. They lose energy from being around people for long periods of time, particularly large crowds. Extroverts, on the other hand, gain energy from other people. Extroverts actually find their energy is sapped when they spend too much time alone. They recharge by being social. First discovered in 2007, Fast radio bursts continue to defy explanation. These cosmic chirps last a thousandth of a second. The characteristics of the radio pulses suggested that they came from galaxies billions of light-years away. However, new works points to a much closer origin flaring star within our own galaxy.
Another administration option is to bake marijuana at a relatively low temperature to kill any dangerous microorganisms and then allow that patient to eat it or drink it. Both of these methods of administration make smoking the drug unnecessary. However, criticism of medical marijuana has also been raised because as a natural plant, it cannot be patented and marketed by pharmaceutical companies and is unlikely to win widespread medical acceptance. Another administration option is to bake marijuana at a relatively low temperature to kill any dangerous microorganisms and then allow that patient to eat it or drink it. Both of these methods of administration make smoking the drug unnecessary. However, criticism of medical marijuana has also been raised because as a natural plant, it cannot be patented and marketed by pharmaceutical companies and is unlikely to win widespread medical acceptance. Certain types of methodology are more suitable for some research projects than others. For example, the use of questionnaires and surveys is more suitable for quantitative research, whereas interviews and focus groups are more often used for qualitative research purposes. In the photo, the wildcat's huge paws are clamped onto the side of the white safari jeep in which Chapel was a passenger. Almost as tall as the jeep on her hind legs, she is to be forcing her muzzle into the back window. Modern buildings have to achieve certain performance requirements, at least to satisfy those of building codes, to provide a safe, healthy, and comfortable environment. However, these conditioned environments demand resources in energy and materials, which are both limited in supply, to build and operate. Moods may also have an effect on how information is processed, by influencing the extent to which judges rely on pre-existing, internal information, or focus on new, external information. Positive moods promote more holistic and top-down processing style, while negative moods recruit more stimulus-driven and bottom-up processing. The situation is similar to a pregnant woman that has twin babies in her belly, says Avi Loeb of the Harvard-Smithsonian Center for Astrophysics. He is proposing the idea in a paper that's been accepted for publication in the astrophysical journal Letters. Domestication is an evolutionary, rather than a political development. They were more likely to survive and prosper in an alliance with humans than on their own. Humans provided the animals with food and protection, in exchange for which the animals provided the humans their milk and eggs and yes, their flesh. Akimbo, this must be one of the odder-looking words in the language and puzzles us in part because it doesn't seem to have any relatives. What's more, it is now virtually a fossil word, until recently almost invariably found in Noms akimbo, a posture in which a person stands with hands on hips and elbows sharply bent outward, one signaling impatience, hostility, or contempt. Yellow is considered as the most optimistic color. Yet surprisingly, people lose their tempers more often in yellow rooms and babies cry more in them. The reason may be that yellow is the hottest color for eyes to take in. So it can be overpowering if overused. A young man from a small provincial town, a man without independent wealth, without powerful family connections and without a university education, moved to London in the late and, in a remarkably short time, became the greatest playwright not of his age alone but of all time. How was this achievement of magnitude made? How did Shakespeare become Shakespeare? Lincoln's apparently radical change of mind about his war power to emancipate slaves was caused by the escalating scope of war, which convinced him that any measure to weaken the Confederacy and strengthen the Union war effort was justifiable as a military necessity.
Some of the pain patients may become hooked. Or their meds may find their way to friends or relatives who take them recreationally. Or a prescription opioid user may transition to heroin. Heroin is just another opioid drug, so the brain doesn't distinguish whether it comes from a pharmacy or from a street drug dealer. To reduce pollution, it is essential that the town center becomes a car-free zone. A ring road should be built so that cars are diverted away from the town center. The main shopping streets could be converted into a pedestrianized area. If trees and flowers are planted, the town center will be transformed into a quiet and green space where residents can enjoy shopping and walking in a healthy environment.
Smoke from Australia's Black Summer bushfires of 2019 to 2020, which burned through 18 million hectares of land, produced a phytoplankton bloom larger than the entire country of Australia located in the Southern Ocean.